So if you are in the audience and waiting to get going, you're very welcome to the session on capacity building, financing NBE, nature-based enterprises, and nature-based solutions. And I have an expert panel with me that I'll introduce in a minute. But first, just to say, my name is Mary Lee Rhodes, and I am the co-director of the Center for Social Innovation in Trinity College, where that's not where I am at the moment. My background is quite dark because I'm in the United States and it's 6 a.m. here and I'm in a little cabin in the woods, which is very naturey. So I feel it's a good ambiance for this session. Who we have here with us today are 5 speakers from across a range of areas looking at finance for nature-based solutions, nature-based enterprises. We have some entrepreneurs, we have people from the public sector putting these in place, and we have some researchers looking how to accelerate the growth and the financing of nature-based solutions. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce everybody at first, and then we'll just go straight in to our first presenter. And I will be guiding us for about 35 minutes to have presentations from our presenters, and then we'll have about 15 minutes of Q&A. Please do put your Q&A in the chat where I can capture it and feed it back into the speakers. If there is anybody who, it's just Ian, I think, who has you have your microphone on, Ian. I think I'm hearing some paper rustling back there. I'm going to do a quick, thanks. I'm going to do a quick introduction of everyone, and then I'm going to go pass it on to you, Ian. So our speakers today are Ian Goodman from My Park Scotland. He's the project manager of My Park Scotland, and he'll be talking about some financing, some innovative financing for public parks in Scotland. We then have Eleftherios Loizou, who is in the Nicosia Development Agency, and he'll be also talking about the beginnings of a project for funding parks there in Nicosia. We also have Matt Davies, who is the co-founder of Mossy Earth, which is a nature-based enterprise focusing on forest and biodiversity. We also have Alina Lukel, who is a researcher in one of the Horizon 2020 projects looking at nature-based solutions and nature-based enterprises. She's going to talk to us around nature-based enterprises and nature-based solutions. And then finally, we have Dan Groot, who is the research lead in Nature Squared, as well as a professor of innovative entrepreneurship in rural areas at Haas University of Applied Sciences. And he's going to be talking about sort of what investors want, the valuation of nature-based enterprises and nature-based solutions, and how you might overcome some challenges there. So hopefully with that, we're going to get going on our session. Thank you for being here. And Ian, I shall pass it over to you.
Great, thanks, Mary. Hopefully I should be able to share my screen, which hopefully people can now see. Good afternoon, good morning, depending where you are. As Mary said, I'm Ian Goodman. I'm the project manager for My Park Scotland. Just before I go into crowdfunding, I thought I'd give you a little bit of information about My Park Scotland. We are a kind of small charity looking at helping community groups raise funds in new and innovative ways for parks and green spaces across Scotland. We've been running for a few years now, raising over £500,000 and supporting over 100 projects through our crowdfunding platform, which is the only dedicated parks and green spaces crowdfunding platform in Scotland. So what is crowdfunding? Again, I don't know what people's experiences are, so I'm just going to read this. Crowdfunding is a method of raising money from a distributed group of funders, the crowd, who provide a large number of small sums, forming a significant total when collected together. There's a vast range of different types of crowdfunding. So rather than me explain it, I'm going to show, hopefully, if the technology works, a quick 1-minute video to run through the different options.
There's no audio there, Ian?
Okay. I'll just skip the video then, and I'll explain. So traditionally, crowdfunding, people offered rewards in relation to small donations. But what we found through our experience for crowdfunding for parks and green space projects is actually what the video refers to is the warm, fuzzy feeling. So it's the idea that people make small donations to get that warm, fuzzy feeling to see a project happen. And our experience and research has found that's what makes people donate. So especially for small community groups, not having to invest in giving rewards to their donors is really useful. Secondly, we have found that what's called a keep it all campaign, where a group will keep all the funds they raise through their crowdfund rather than an all or nothing, which is a more traditional form of crowdfunding. Again, we found a lot of groups, because they're community groups and volunteers, actually the all or nothing kind of approach was kind of daunting for them. In terms of crowdfunding, I just wanted to highlight kind of quickly 5 benefits that we see for groups raising funds for parks and green space projects. The first 2, as you can see, are around flexibility. Crowdfunding projects, crowdfunding campaigns can be for small or large projects, and we've supported projects anything from small groups wanting to raise £50 to large groups looking for £50,000 for park and green space redevelopment projects. The other bit of flexibility, which I think is key, is that the crowdfunding can be used for all or part of a project. Increasingly, as kind of traditional grant funding becomes harder to get, crowdfunding provides a great way to actually make up any shortfall in a project if you're not able to secure full grant funding. On the flip side of that, we have groups that have used crowdfunding as actually a great way to demonstrate to more traditional funders community support for their project. If you can go to a funder and say, actually, 150 people have put their hands in their pockets and donated money to our project, it shows a real level of engagement and support. On a non-monetary sense, one of the things is that actually it helps raise the profile of your group or organisation. The main thing about a crowdfunding campaign is you have to do a lot of promotion and promoting the group. So actually, it helps raise the profile of your organisation as well as hopefully bringing in funds. And the final of the 5 benefits is cost effective. Most crowdfunding platforms charge a small processing or management fee, but nothing more than that. So actually the biggest cost is time in terms of delivering your crowdfund. With all those positives in mind, it's worth bearing in mind a few challenges for any groups looking to crowdfund. So first of all, you've got to earn the trust of your potential donors. They've got to believe in you and believe in your group that you're going to deliver that project. Secondly, it's working out your marketing campaign. How are you going to reach a crowd? How are you going to reach the widest audience possible to get those donations? And that really has to be outside your normal audience. Telling your story, you've got to get the message about the project and the importance of the project through quickly, because people's attention span, especially if promoting online, is really short. So it's like getting those key messages across. Maintaining enthusiasm. One of the hardest things for any group running a crowdfunding campaign is to keep on promoting. So it's about actually how do you maintain that enthusiasm? And a lot of groups don't consider crowdfunding purely because of fear of failure. It's a very public way of raising funds. So if you don't succeed, it's a very public failure. In terms of getting ready to crowdfund and hopefully reducing that fear of failure, so there are some key points. Getting ready before you launch. Prepare your press releases, your promotion before you press go on the crowdfund. Don't press go and then try and start writing your material. Get that all prepared. Build a team. Even for the smallest community groups, don't leave it to one person. It's hard for one person to maintain enthusiasm. So actually try and share the load a little bit. Be realistic about your target, both in terms of the money you're looking to raise and also how much time you've got to commit to promoting the campaign, because it can take over your life. From experience, it become all-consuming. If you've already got a community, warm them up before you launch. Tell them it's coming so they're ready to donate on day one, because actually if you've got some donations already in your crowdfund, people are more likely to donate. The hardest one is to get that cold first donation. Plan your campaign throughout, keep the communication going, make sure you've got planned and when you can jump on the back of anyone else's promotion. And I'd also add to that, which I didn't put in the slides, is actually celebrate success. If you get halfway there in raising your funds, celebrate that. Although I said don't reward, we don't suggest rewarding donors. You should reward them by saying thank you. Always thank your donors. If you thank them and keep them informed about what you're doing, there's a good chance they might come back and donate a second time or for a future crowdfund. To help with all that, we have developed a free crowdfunding resource kit, which is downloadable from our website listed there. And I can also pop that in the chat. And that kind of breaks down the different types of crowdfunding. It's got a really simple workbook for groups to think about how to plan their campaign. So I would suggest if you're thinking about crowdfunding, have a look at that. It's not designed specifically for our platform. It can be used to plan your campaign, whatever platform you're using. And it's free to download, as I say. That is my very, very quick run through crowdfunding. I'm sorry it's been so quick, but obviously I'm happy to answer any questions kind of either now or Mary later on in this session.
Super, thanks, Ian. I think if we can, we'll hold questions till the end to make sure that that we get everybody in. I will say if you could pop it in the chat, that would be great. I have found that very, very convenient in all the other sessions that I've gone to. So one thing I forgot to say when I started this out is it is being recorded. So we will have a recording of these sessions and indeed all sessions available after the summit. So we've got a good few people from around the world. So welcome to our audience there from around the world. And we're going to move quickly on, moving from Scotland over to Cyprus. And I'm going to hand over to Eleftherios Loizou from the Nicosia Development Agency to talk about another approach to funding parks through innovative ways of bringing the community, in this case, the private sector, on board. So Eleftherios, may I hand it off to you?
Thank you, Marily. Hi from Cyprus, from Nicosia. It's very hot here today, but I will provide the presentation for you. I'm going to talk about a new scheme that we have put forward. It's entitled Adopt a Park. And please allow me to share my screen for... Okay, so I'm going to talk about this Adopt a Park scheme. Please allow me to briefly introduce our organization. Nicosia Development Agency is an organization operating in the capital city of Nicosia in Cyprus. And it has 9 members, 9 municipalities operating in the wider area of the capital city of Nicosia. Now, in the framework of our exemplar, which concerns a very big network of green infrastructure in our city, and has as a basis a very big park, the Athalassa National Forest Park, which is a huge park within the city of Nicosia, and it is operated by the Department of Forest. We have designed a wider range of network that includes several other smaller and other kind of green spaces, parks and green spaces. So what we have here, we have large parks that are operated and financed by the central government, and we have a big number of smaller green areas that are operated under the responsibility of local authorities, the municipalities. And unfortunately, municipalities face difficulties in terms of limited resources, both financially as well as in relation to their capacities. I'm talking about their staff. So we saw an opportunity there to engage the private sector within this effort, which was also an objective of our exemplar, how to involve the private sector in the exemplar's design and operation. So we decided to put forward a scheme entitled Adopt a Park, and in this way we ensure the involvement of the private business.
Eleftherios,
are we going to?
I think maybe you're not moving. The slide's not moving. I think you're speaking to your second slide. Do you want to?
Yes.
We're still on your first slide on the screen. Did you want to move? Okay.
Can you see the second slide now?
No, not yet.
Okay.
So if you want to go to the second slide, you're also in, I think, sort of monitor mode if you want to go into display mode or presentation mode. So we're seeing your slide deck on the side as well.
Okay, let me.
So you've gone, yep, there's the second slide, yep.
Okay, let me make it bigger. I was in the full screen, so you couldn't see it moving. Now
you're good now. I can see we can see your second screen.
Okay, this was the screen the slide I was describing earlier. So I'm moving to the first slide now. Can you see it?
Not just yet. There it is. There it is.
Okay.
Super.
Okay. I exited the full screen, so I'm using the simple presentation mode. Okay. So as I was explaining you, we found a way through this scheme to engage the private entities. And how are we going to do this? We will prepare a call for participation, for them to express their interest, to receive their interest, to do what will be described in the terms and conditions of the documents. I'm talking about them in a little while. So we are expecting large businesses to use this scheme as part of their CSR strategy. So they will offer some of their money, they will allocate to their CSR strategies to maintain and do some other activities in some parks they will select. And of course, from other smaller or medium enterprises, we are expecting them to be engaged through implementation of specific projects. For example, establishing specific equipment through the large business SS engagement or other activities. Another example is to maintain the green of the parks. So what we are looking forward from the business is to deal with the appearance of the parks and the design of them, to establish some equipment and some other facilities for the public to use, to plan and implement some of their actions. For example, some of their business events that might be either internal or external, to maintain, of course, and preserve the park and the green in the park, and put forward some green awareness raising actions. And finally, we decided to create a monitoring committee to monitor the entire efforts, which is consisted of our agency, the two departments of the central government, which is the Department of Forest and the Department of Environment, our member municipalities, and one municipality will participate according to the park engaged each time, and the University of Cyprus to provide scientific expertise. And we have selected the Faculty of Engineering, which includes also the Department of Architecture and Urban Planning. And the next steps are the following. We have already prepared the guidelines for applicants. We have drafted the documents. We expect that the call for expressions will go public on autumn 2021. We intended to have it already published. However, due to the COVID-19 restrictions, we had some delays. We expect business then to submit their interest and their plan for maintaining and adopting a park for a period of 5 years. Then a selection procedure will follow from the monitoring committee described above, based on criteria already included in the drafted documents. And the 5-year contract will be signed with the large enterprises. And then a 5-year implementation and monitoring will take place, hopefully initiated by early 2022. Sorry for delaying through the administrative procedures of the presentation, and I'm at your disposal for any question or inquiries you have at the end.
Thank you, Eleftherios. Really interesting, showing two different approaches from park management in the public sector with sort of 21st century types of support and philanthropy. So we're going to go straight into another side of the coin, which is the nature-based enterprises coming more or less from private entrepreneurship. And I'm going to hand you off to Matt Davies, who's going to talk about Mossy Earth and some of the, I would say, more entrepreneurial type financing approaches that he took in Mossy Earth, he and his partner in financing their endeavors. So Matt, over to you. Mute. You okay? We're still not hearing you. I can see still the little line through your microphone. For those of you in the audience, we did in fact practice this. It's one of those things.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Sorry. So I was politely thanking everybody. So thank you, Mary. Thank you for all the team at Connecting Nature, and hello to all the viewers. And like Mary said, we had practiced it, but yeah, I'm sort of averse to technology, and that's why I also kept it simple. I won't be presenting anything today, so you'll just have to look at my ugly mug for a few minutes. So my name's Matt. I'm the co-founder of Mossy Earth, and we're a social enterprise, and it's our mission to restore nature primarily across Europe, and we do that through our rewilding and reforestation projects. And our revenue stream is a membership. So an individual pays £10 a month, and with that £10, we plant them 4 trees every month and also fund a rewilding project with the rest of their £10. And then they get fed back a lot of content. They have a dashboard and account where they can see their monthly impact. They can get on-the-ground updates through video and podcasts through their dashboard. So that's the revenue stream. And myself and Duarte, the fellow co-founder, we bootstrapped the organization. So there was no investment, no savings at the beginning. We were quick to build a sort of a product that would work. Initially, we were selling trees, single purchase. You could come onto our website, buy a tree for a friend, buy a tree because you wanted to, or to offset some carbon. And after about a year, we moved into the membership model, where that really helped with our cash flow forecasting as well as our tree planting planning. Because a lot of planning, an organization goes into planting thousands of trees every month. And today I'd just like to talk to you about some of the financing options we've been through and the experiences we've had. So we started out bootstrapping it, no savings, no investment. And then after about a year and a half or 2 years, we were approached by an organization whereby they would give us a loan based on tech work. So they built our new website and a lot of back-end stuff for the technicality of the membership. And the idea was that we would loan £50,000 from them, and then after the work was complete, they would help us raise funds and enter the German market. They have a big presence in the German market, and once the first round of money was raised, they would then get equity in our company, depending on how much they raised. Sadly, the initial work didn't go well. The organization had very different values from us. We're very much about impact. It's not about the money. And perhaps we should have done more due diligence on the organization, because unfortunately they didn't meet a lot of the criteria that they said they were going to build for us. So after that, we decided we don't want to raise with them, because we then don't want to give away equity of our organization. So we agreed with them that we would pay this loan back by the end of this year. And the real big learning here for me and for anybody looking to finance is to do a lot of due diligence and also find people that share the same values as you. I mean, that's my experience. And yeah, if I was to do it again, I would do that. And shortly after that experience, the corona pandemic started. And as we're a UK-based organization, Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, for all his flaws, he was very quick to create what they call the Boris Loan. So it was an interest-free loan for small and medium-sized organizations. And it was a very easy process. So we took advantage of that because at the time, we didn't know, what was going to happen to the economy. So we were quick to take that loan. It was a very easy process. And it certainly helped with our cash flow. Though fortunately, we had very few drop-offs in our membership throughout the coronavirus. But it was very useful as a safety net. And I think the simple learning from this one is just be aware what is out there. There are lots of ways of sourcing finance, and some easier or more difficult than others. So yeah, it's worth researching. I think that's the learning there. And then the most recent financing is there's an organization called Forward Partners, really useful. It's revenue that you can use for marketing and growth. And they charge a fixed fee of 6%, and then they base what they lend you on your revenue. And it can be anything from 10,000 to 1 million. And we had to provide bank statements, our cash flow forecasting, and they can then work out how much they would lend us. We pay this 6% fee, and we can use this money for growth. So although we had a bad experience about growing quickly with the other organization, we still would like to find a growth channel that provides us a reliable number of members each month, so it can help with our forecasting. So this has been a really useful means of financing. So Forward Partners, if anybody, I could put the link in the chat as well at the end. That's been very helpful. And then the last thing we're actually looking into, and actually it was very interesting listening to Ian's talk, is crowdfunding. It's an area that we're thinking of exploring for some of our one-off projects. So I'll probably be getting into contact with Ian or reading through the notes that was put in the chat. But that's really everything on our experience as a social enterprise. And yeah, I'm available for questions at the end.
Thank you, Matt. That's really, really helpful, and a different perspective on how you go about reaching out and these creative forms of debt financing that are starting to emerge out there, which is a great lead in, I think, to our next speaker, Alina Luckel, who's going to talk to us a bit about some research about the shape, size, and financing of nature-based enterprises, nature-based solutions, which she's working on, emerging research in this area. Hand over to you, Alina.
Hello, thank you. Also, a warm welcome from my side, and thank you for the invitation. So I'm going to present some outcomes of a market research we were doing in the WeGreen project. This is a project funded by the Horizon 2020 of the European Union. And so we're going to look into some challenges faced by NBEs, also supporting factors which can enable projects for NBEs, and also some financing structures which we investigated during our research. So let's see if this, you see my presentation, right? Yeah, all right. Perfect. So the aim of our study was to investigate business models and current practices, and also it was the foundation of the further work within our WeGreen work package. And so we wanted to draw a broad overview over the NBS market in Europe and to gain a general picture about the stakeholders and to look at the general financial structures. We have to say that it's not a representative study, but it gives us some guiding indications, it gives us some guidelines, and draws a picture where Europe is heading in the NBE, in the nature-based economy, we can say. So we did a literature review and an online survey, and as well as some semi-structured interviews in over 10 countries. I'm not going to go into details now, but if you have any questions later, you can get back to me. So the graphs I'm presenting are the outcomes of our study. And first of all, I want to point out how unbroad and unstructured the NBS market is. So NBS is still a relatively new term for a lot of the stakeholders. And that's also the reason why the market is not really defined yet. But from our sample, we can say that most of the interviewed stakeholders classify as company, and they conduct their activities for profit and for non-profit. And it's also interesting to see that most of them classify for micro companies, so from 0 to 9 paid employees. And regarding their development stage, most of them classify themselves as companies or organizations in growth, and their annual turnover is below 100,000 euros. Most of the interviewed stakeholders operate on a city and municipality level. And when we look at different activities the NBEs do, we classified them into innovative and classic activities. And we can see that overall, most of them still do slightly more classic activities. And as classic activities, we can take, for example, gardens and parks in cities, whereas innovative activities are activities which were not so common years ago. For example, these are or do already belong in the city, in the cityscape for a long time. And we also looked at the different development stages, and we found out that startups do slightly more innovative activities, whereas mature companies work slightly more with classic activities. When looking at financing, we saw research told us that most important financing sources are still public funding, so EU funding and also public funding on national and local level. So we were interested to look more deeper into that, and we looked at the financing source by development stage. So we looked at startups, companies in growth, and mature companies, and looked at their financing sources. And what we can see here is that the higher the development stages, also the highest the potential to use EU funding to open up for new markets and new products. And startups more often finance their project through remunerations by private or individual customers. When looking at the same structure, but now divided by the company size, it shows us a similar picture. It shows us that also larger companies and organizations have a bigger share of public and EU funding. And only micro companies, which really focus on a specific product or a niche product, they can finance a significant share of their needs by selling products or private funding sources. So these figures show us that the NBS market is not really well developed yet, because growing and mature companies still strongly depend on funding, and only to a low extent they can cover their needs with private funding sources. And also throughout the interviews we had with several stakeholders overall in Europe, they pointed out the difficulty of financing, and also to classify their financing structure, because a lot of the companies have different financing structures. They're as individual as their products are. And in our interviews and our survey, we also put a focus on challenges and on supporting factors for NBEs. And we can see that external factors and financing factors are rated rather negatively. So it can be a challenge for the NBEs if there are public policies which do not really enable their projects, or if there are complicated building codes, or it's hard to get official permissions. Also, finding factors as the cost structure or the ratio of costs to revenues can be a real challenge for NBEs. It's rated rather positive for internal factors and social environment factors. So skills and competencies in the own company, and also the recognition and support by society were marked as highly positive. So to follow up and to end up, I just want to point out some recommendations and need of the NBEs, which were found throughout the survey. And a lot of them pointed out the need for more awareness for nature and sustainability and biodiversity within society, but even more actually within policymakers and other stakeholders on community level, for example. Also, transparency on the information diffusion is a point which is really important to them. A call for more political willingness and less bureaucracy was mentioned a lot, because sometimes it's really hard to get permissions for certain projects. And if there is a certain political will behind it, then it would be easier to change those regulations. And regarding finance, there is still a need and a call for more availability and access to funding in order that it's easier for NBEs to really do their projects. Yeah, that's already all from my side. Thank you for your attention, and I guess we're gonna have a good discussion later on. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alina. That was great. I'm monitoring a bit of robust discussion going on in the chat, so that's super. We will come back to some of those questions that have been asked, but I can see our panelists are already on the chat and answering questions. So thanks to them. There is one question out that just came out. Paniki Dasgupta from Delhi. Welcome, by the way, from Delhi. I'm not sure what time it is, who asked about how to derive tangible and intangible value, which to me is a great lead-in to our next speaker, Dan Groot, who's going to talk a little bit about valuation. How do the NBEs go about demonstrating their value to investors and to financiers? So Dan, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mary Lee. I'm going to try to share my screen and be audible in one go. So hopefully that all works now.
Where are you coming to us from, Dan? I know you're in some lovely place.
Yeah, I'm actually by the Folie du Dordogne. It's a very quaint French city sitting right by the river on a small holiday in the nature. So that's a good place to be.
Super.
You're seeing my screen now?
Yep.
That's great. Yeah, so for me, it's good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan Groot. I'm a professor of applied science on new business models for nature, and I'm also the director of a small research and project office in the Netherlands. So normally I am based in Amsterdam. And we do work on the value of nature in various contexts. So we look within urban areas, rural areas, the role of biodiversity within supply chains, and green finance. And today I will be talking a little bit about the nexus of green finance and urban nature-based solutions. Because as we almost all are quite aware, nature-based solutions have a huge potential to contribute to many of the large urban challenges about the quality of the living environment, about climate adaptation, about the heat island effect, about air quality. Pollution is going to be the #1 killer around the world if the current trajectory is going to continue within a few years, but also a lot of elements that have to do with social cohesion. These are all big challenges that nature-based solutions can have a huge contribution to, and which we really are almost obligated to work on. If we don't do that in our larger and larger urban cities, city centers, we're really going to get into trouble. But just saying that and recognizing those values is not the whole picture yet, because these values can be described in different ways and at different levels. So what I'm showing you now is something that's called the valuation pyramid. And for each of these values, you can describe them in a qualitative, quantitative, and monetized way. Where qualitative would be a tree stores carbon, but you don't really say how much it would be. Quantitative would be a hectare of pine forest stores this amount of tons of carbon a year. And monetized would say, okay, and that is worth 5,000 euros a year, for example. And obviously, when we're talking about financing and nature-based business models, we do want to get to that point of capturing also that value in euros or dollars or whatever currency. But in my experience so far, we've done a lot of projects around this, is that you don't always want to be on the top of that pyramid, because on one way, you are getting into the euros there, but you're also losing a lot of information if you're only talking about euros. Because if you translate everything into a currency, you're losing sight of the real benefits that you're actually adding with your projects, such as how many liters of water or how many tons of CO2 are actually being captured. So although the valuation pyramid has the monetization in the top, I always want you to take into consideration, why am I looking at these values and what am I going for? And then with the aspect of certainty, there is this dichotomy maybe between preciseness and robustness, because if we develop a mathematical model to quantify and monetize some ecosystem services, it's quite easy to get to a very precise number, because the Excel sheet does all the hard work. But that doesn't mean that that number is very robust. So sometimes it's better to be vaguely right than to be precisely wrong. And it's always good to have a good understanding of all the assumptions that you put in place when you're calculating these values, rather than sticking very strict to a formula and showing something that seems very precise, but is not quite robust. And then maybe also not a fit for your purpose, because one case is not the other, depending on your audience as well. Some people really want to hear about euros, and other people just want to hear about all the impacts that you can make. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with the concept of ecosystem services, so this is something that you could apply on all of those services. If not, it's a good starting point for anyone to see what nature-based solutions actually can contribute to. But then there's another important aspect, because if you start monetizing the value, and even if you're able to that both very robust and very precise, you get into a different challenge, because the society values for investing in nature-based solutions are actually quite high. This is a tool that we helped develop for the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs. It's a free-to-use tool. It is in Dutch though, so not accessible so easily for everyone around the world. But for the Dutch context, it can actually calculate, if you add more trees, more parks, etc., to a city, what it's worth. And if you start playing around with it, even if you don't do anything crazy, the societal benefits will be in the millions. It will be of a huge value. But it's not quite an ATM where you can go to and get that money for you to actually do that project. So there is still a huge difference between the societal values of a certain nature-based solution project and your possibilities to actually capture that money and get funding for your project. On that, we have written some reports that you can download. I will also pop these in the chat. One is about bankable nature solution. It's something that we did together with WWF and a 160 million euro Dutch fund, which is ready to invest in nature-based solution projects. And another one is investing in green urban future, where we really looked at specifically urban projects and the financing, innovative financing schemes behind those. But yeah, what you keep seeing is that although the value of a certain project is quite high, the actual business case of the project itself and its capacity to collect cash flow to get a cash flow on the way which actually enables you to pay back your loan, or to actually become more valuable in equity so that people actually want to invest in it, that's a real challenge still. And there's a big role to play still for the public sector. On the right, you see a game that we developed, a serious game, the Urban Green Finance game, where we allow people to explore different roles within the public and private sector and get a better understanding of how can you actually get out of this trap where we have this huge societal value and these huge societal challenges, but we're still not able to make that business case work. And that game actually gives you a lot of insight in how you can break through that. And some of the key challenges, there are huge differences between the benefit holders and the cost bearers. And quite often, the one who has to make all the costs for implementation of nature-based solutions is a single entity, and the benefit is scattered around many, many benefit holders. Another key element is the term. When we're making business cases, we're quite used to relatively short break-even points of 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. But with nature-based solutions, the gains are huge, but quite often on the long term. And we're not quite good at moving beyond short term into the long term, not only because the financial system is not really built for that, but also because of the huge uncertainties. We haven't done it before, so it's really hard to calculate the risks, and therefore banks just do not step in. And then on the public side, we have a really lack of an integrated approach to costs and benefits. So there's a lot of value for health coming from green, but the way that our budgets, at least in the Netherlands and most of Europe, work is that the health department cannot invest in a park because it's not their mandate, and their budgets are earmarked for certain projects, but not to develop a park. And we are still very much lacking that integrated perspective and really trying to connect all the dots within the role of the public sector itself. Quite often we also, sorry.
That's okay. Just conscious that I'd like to have a bit of time for questions and answers.
I'm going to my last sheet.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. So what I'm actually proposing today is really a call to action to all public sectors, because quite often we feel we are lacking methodologies, we are lacking the data to really get out of this problem. But what I feel is that we really just should start making progress by doing. So my call to action is that within each urban development, a greener scenario must be developed, calculated, and investigated against possibilities for new financial arrangements. Meaning that even if you're already aware that that greener scenario is not feasible or not entirely feasible, you still go and give it a go, because the next time round, maybe with some of the learnings, you do get a little bit of that greener scenario. And if we just accept the fact that these nature-based solutions are not feasible yet, we're not going to get any further. And just for your reference, but I'll just send that after some of the examples of such innovative arrangements, but I'll skip that for now.
Thanks, Dan. That last slide's really useful. So if you just have any links to any information in the chat, that'd be great, because there's lots, as I said, going on in the chat. Thanks for that interesting overview, and thank you to all of our panelists for kind of walking us through their experiences and what they've learned about financing nature-based enterprises, either personally or through research and interviews working with people. As I said, we have a good few questions in the chat, but in the incredibly efficient way that the panelists are participating, a lot of them have been answered. There's one early on that I'd like to come back to, because I think it's a really interesting one in the context of some of the findings that Alina presented, where she was saying that, you know, this is many of these are funded by the public sector. There was a question there from Maria Mavrudi early on around whether or not crowdfunding is an option for large nature-based solutions. So I know, Ian, you were saying it was 50 to 50,000 pounds, but I just wonder if you thought this was an option for larger NBS. So we'll maybe start with you, and then maybe go to one or two of the researchers.
The simple answer is yes. But I think the consideration is the level of work to attract that larger volume of donations. I did a bit of looking after I seen that question. We've had a couple of projects close recently. One which raised £25,000, and it was required 316 donations, and a couple of those were significant donations. And we've got an ongoing project which has reached the £10,000 mark and got 238 small donations. So I think, yes, it is possible for much bigger solutions and much bigger projects, but it's the level of work to raise that larger amount of funds that's quite a challenge, if I'm being honest. So if that's something that there's a crowd out there and you can do, then yes, absolutely.
Ian, I don't know, maybe Alina, if you saw much crowdfunding in the research you've done thus far for larger enterprises or larger solutions?
Sorry, I think I didn't hear the beginning of the question. It was from me, right?
Yep, I was saying, Alina, I'm just saying if you've seen any evidence of crowdfunding in any larger nature-based enterprises or nature-based solutions. I was going to come to Dan next.
Actually, we haven't seen so many. We were a little surprised as well, because we thought we would find more crowdfunding examples, but we didn't. But in Regreen, we want to put more focus on crowdfunding further on. So we hope to find more later on. But until now, we couldn't find that many examples, and not for really big NBS. No.
Super. Okay. Thanks so much. And I might, there's another, well, it's a question here from Carlotta Conte on Dan's presentation, which maybe leads into another side of this question about how we attract investors or funders or members or crowds, talking about unbundling co-benefits and linking specific beneficiaries. That's been an experience in trees in the infrastructure. I don't know if that kind of unbundling and matching values to specific sorts of interested parties, is that something you see a bit of at all, or is that a tricky situation? And that's to Dan.
No, I think that's very much on point, but it is tricky at the same time, with the financial arrangements that you need to sort out and organize. All these different stakeholders, they have their different preferences, the different way benefits, the different ways that they value certain aspects, but it is the way forward. And I think the magic word in one way, but on the other hand, it's not the golden bullet, is blended finance. There's a lot of stuff going on where we are looking for ways to integrate public and private funding streams, and you can play around with it. There's infinite amount of options, especially in the WWF book that I just shared. You can find quite a bit on it. But we these new financial arrangements and unbundling those benefits and really to the stakeholders that are most interested in those is a great way forward for that. But at the same time, we also see how difficult it is, because even with public sector organizations that have the public goals at heart, they find it quite difficult to really go outside of their existing mandates, let alone private companies. On the other hand, also coming to the large scale bit, when you look at private finance, they don't have a problem at all with large numbers. The bigger, the better. If you have a huge investment opportunity, they will run for it. The only problem is that we do need that proof of concept of the underlying business case. And there's a little bit of a valley of death in between, where the amounts get to that large scale project are not there. And that's definitely something that the public sector can step up and aid with.
Thanks for that insight, Dan. That's great. And there's lots of comments in the, well, thanks for the links, and there's lots of comments in the chat about some of the value of understanding how to communicate, how to measure, and how to reach specific audiences. There's another question here from Pinaki Dasgupta, looking at how investors may be introduced and engaged in research and development on ecosystem services. Is it possible to get investors involved in early stage ecosystem services, or having any examples of that? I might open that up to the panel. So if anybody has any experience or knowledge around that, getting research and development funding from investors. There's this bit of a silence there. Dan.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to be chatting all the time, but there are some technical assistance support systems available through, for example, the European Investment Bank, but also quite a few of the development banks have similar. Actually, the Dutch Fund for Climate Development is a very feasible one. They will offer you 40,000 and 80,000 in the stage 1 and the stage 2 development phase to really work out your business model. But at the same time, yeah, it always, for them, because it is investment money, it's not a donation, there needs to be light at the end of the tunnel about how that would come back to them. And not the 40 and 80,000, but for them, it's a funnel towards investment of 1 million, 5 million. And yeah, if you don't have a vision on that, it's hard to get that initial money. But there are a lot of facilities for it. And if anyone wants to know specifically, I can also guide them towards the right one.
Thanks, Dan. I might just ask a question that I think maybe the audience might be interested in, as maybe the last question, take the right of chair and direct it to Matt. Matt, you're on stage, because I think what you did to get your audience, to get the members, you know, some of the experience you did with outreaching to people who might be, you know, speakers around what you're doing, and also what you give to them. And because what you've created is a cash flow that then you could leverage for further investment. So how did you get people to invest, if you will, or to fund you as members?
Yeah, is my audio working?
Yep.
Good, good start. So at the beginning of Mossy Earth, we're 4 years old, and in our first year, we were very lucky to engage with quite a high-profile climber called Alex Honnold. He's the face of these free climbing videos, and he's got a huge following. And having these ambassadors talk about what we're doing has been a huge help in reaching a wider audience of people. So he stumbled across us, but we have then, since we've seen the success of that, we've then gone out looking for ambassadors that are involved in nature, who share the same values as us. It's not as easy as we thought. We thought, you know, you could just contact a few ambassadors, people with, you know, big followings on social media, and they'd be happy to help. It's not been as easy, and also not as easy finding people that really share the exact values. But we have a couple of ambassadors on board, and as and when they talk about Mossy Earth, it has a positive effect on the engagement, the number of members that we, or the audience that we have, and then eventually the number of members that we have sign up each month.
Super. Thanks so much. And I think hopefully, Mark Bennett, that answered your question. If it is the flow is from the membership model. So they're banking forward partners specifically on the flows of membership fees. So listen, it's 7 o'clock in my time. I know it's 1 o'clock in Central European time, and it's time to wrap this really fascinating panel up. I want to thank all of the panelists. I want to thank the Connecting Nature folks and Horizon NUA for running this incredible summit. I do want to remind people to answer the poll. It's been in the chat. You just go to events, click on the poll. It literally takes 5 seconds, but will help us focus the next round of research and intervention. And with that, I think we might just say, have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Cheerio.
Thanks.